And hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unslaved. Very happy to be here with you once again. Today, Michael and I were originally scheduled to do an interview with Brian Nichols about his new book, Rational Christianity, but unfortunately he had a few technical difficulties on his end with the connection. So we're sadly going to have to postpone that interview for a future date once he's got that all sorted out. But Michael and I figured it would be worth us coming on to talk about this subject, share a bit about our perspective. Michael's got some slides ready for us, and just to help you think about this subject, and then hopefully we can pose some of these questions to Brian and maybe some other guests down the road. So Michael, glad we're here having this conversation. You've written a new article on your astrotheology site. You've written many articles on this subject, and so we'll link all that below for everybody. But where should we begin with this? I mean, we've gone over, you've read through Brian's book. We've heard a lot of different people try to bring different flavors of different versions of understanding Christianity to people. I personally think there's a mixed bag when it comes to this religion, but in the end, it seems to be one of the religions that has a lot of questions to answer. And so I think that it's important that we go through it. So where should we begin with this?
Well, with Brian, you see, the subject's vast, right? And he has come at it in a certain way in order to try and modernize Christianity, in order to try and somewhat make it equivalent to science. This happens periodically, doesn't it? You know, even Immanuel Kant had noticed that by his time, science had developed, you know, through leaps and bounds, where the premises of religion and even the metaphysics behind religion, like behind Christianity, was still very backward. You know, the scholastics, how many angels can fit on the head of a pin, and various other things that had absolutely nothing to do with ordinary human beings or the plight of the world or the nature of evil. And amongst those scholastic, because people, if they pick up Brian's book, they'll see that he has a lot of his attempts to modernize the argument, you know, and bring it up to date. And I'm sure he has a very legitimate penchant, an interest in philosophy. You see, so somebody who's developed an interest in philosophy, but then they're Christians. So there's a natural tendency for them to want to sort of inject, or let's put it this way, bring Christianity up to date out of any of its medieval dross. It's not like he's just set that work to himself. Many have tried this, right? And it's very important that they modernize it because they want a modern audience, you know, to work with it, right? To take it on board. So there's a lot of in-house renovation to be done. I recommend that. I'm always recommending for, you know, people, you know, that tend to your own house, you know, so the man is doing that. So full marks for the attempt. That's the very thing I've been crying out for. But see, those scholastic ideas, like, you know, what came before the universe, you know, who made God, right? Because, you know, just based on cause and effect and the process of time. And Brian deals with all of that. He's looking into those, you know, we would say it now in terms of, you know, more like what came before the Big Bang. And, you know, maybe we'll touch on some of the slides that he had sent you to point out, you know, because look, the book doesn't work for me. You know, I'm not a Christian, I'm not an atheist, but the book doesn't work for me. And maybe we should spend an hour, you know, touching on that, on why that is. But again, yeah, full marks for somebody trying to update. But then never forget that all the different religions are jostling for the moral ground. You know, if they didn't, they wouldn't be different religions. They'd all be one religion, right? They're all separated because they're all trying to say that we have the right picture metaphysically. You know, let me stop for a second and close that blind.
Yeah, sure, no problem. That is an interesting point there, because, and that was one of the questions when I was off air with Brian, I was asking, which is what I ask people from any religious background, which is, what makes your religion special? What makes it unique? And what makes it then the idea that now is sort of territorializing those questions and saying, you can't ask anywhere else. You have to only come to the cloth, only talk to the priests, only look at the book, only come through this narrative. And no matter how much updating and revamping of these ideas that they're trying to do, they'll never update it to the point where they actually lose some of the major tenets of those religions, because that, of course, would then completely destroy the entire concept of it, right? So where's the fine line? And I think Brian's trying to find that fine line and say, no, there is a way that it works. There's a way we can prove it empirically. There's a way, but the tenets of Christianity, no matter which denomination you come from, are pretty much the same. It's the salvationist religion, that Jesus lived and died and breathed, was resurrected from the dead, that it's a proof of God, that the God that is there is somehow outside of the universe and created it from outside of the universe as an external figure in a way. And then the only path to having eternal life is through the belief and the faith in the deity, in the Christ, in the book, in the tenets. And so for me, I'm trying to also answer this question: is it possible to have a rational Christianity or a rational Islam or a rational Buddhism or a rational religious perspective that can work with the tenets of objective truth, objective reality, all those things? And so, yeah, you were just kind of breaking that down, Michael, about, and this is something we've spoken about many times, is that the problem is, like when I was looking at cults, it becomes this thing where you cannot think outside of this. You're not permitted to, because we've proven to you that this is the objective truth. And so you can't question it, even if new information comes in to contradict it. And that becomes the issue. I'm not saying that's what Brian's doing. I'm just saying that's been my experience in having debates with many Christians and many other religious types.
Dogma is still preserved there, just because they want to modernize and they want to plug in some philosophical tenets, and they love getting into debates and everything. Never forget that the dogma that you just spoke about is still lurking there, right? And that is medievalistic. And what we've got to do is that, despite all of these modernizations, see, look, it's well known in criminology, and this goes for the rest of mankind, but they've discovered that psychopaths always know how to use the right words, right? So even a dogmatic, right, perverse, criminalistic religion that's caused so much harm and hurt and mental derangement and physical crime, they were still using words like love, still using words like morality, right? Because the psychopath has learned from mirroring good people that using the right words works and requires very little effort on your part. So when they're acting like demons, they're speaking like angels, right? This is something one has to confront with these people, right? Not that that exonerates other evil people who are not Christians, but I'm just talking generally. The words are easy. And when you find out that by conjuring words, like the Roman Catholic Church does, like the evangelists do, and this works, this is like a Saruman kind of magic. Hey, why change it? Keep sprouting those talismanic words and those highfalutin moral terms, right? And maybe that'll work as well to keep yourself going when nothing else will. But there is a desire in people, like Brian, I think, that they've studied philosophy. He cites my book. He's watched a lot of our podcasts. There's a very strong awareness of what else is going on in the world. Alternative movements, right? Different kind of thinking. I mean, of the real kind, these people are aware of it. So they can't leave their dogma. So what they try to do is like a little sea creature that goes out and snatches something from, the waters and drags it back home. They try to then refurnish and set up a new window display, and I understand it, because the thing is bankrupt to the core. And look, let's take one example. Rational Christianity is the name of the book, right? Immanuel Kant proved in the 1700s, that never and ever can Christianity or any religion ever call itself rational. And he didn't do this facetiously, or he was a Christian, he was a total believer, right? But he was a skeptic, because he said that technically speaking, all religion can only be a matter of faith. You just talked about that yourself a minute ago. It is belief-based and it's faith-based. Let it stay. And we certainly cannot visit his argument, but he proved that since that is the case, and that God and the existence of God or another world, either in a physical, what happened before the first cause, or in any other kind of context, where does God live? What is he doing there? None of that can be proven. There's alignment, right? And that alignment can never be crossed. He called his book The Critique of Pure Reason, which just means looking at the limits of reason. And the limit was, you're never going to be able to say what happens in this other world that he called the numinous world, right? noumenal world. We're in the phenomenal world, phenomenal world, right? But he said, I clip the wings of reason to make way for faith, because that lineament of, beyond which reason cannot go is not in itself a reason to not believe in something higher, right? And many people can come to that wall, not just Christians, going, yeah, I believe in a great spirit or some, deeper force in the universe, but you'll never be able to prove it rationally. Now, Immanuel Kant has established that in the 1790s or whatever, right? Whenever the Critique of Pure Reason, and every dean of every college, every philosopher of merit, all the seminarians, certainly all the Christian world sighed a relief and went, oh, great, because he's shown, science, here's where your compartment is, right? To study the hard physical world right in front of you, carry on. Don't intrude into the world of religion anymore like you've been trying to do. And religion, stay the hell out of science, right? Deal with your faith, deal with passion, deal with belief, and deal with all of that. And Kant assigned these two things. And even though there were detractors, right, to the Kant thing, it's basically stood. Christians have accepted this. So when somebody comes along and writes a book called Rational Christianity, it's almost a anathema. It's almost a misnomer, because it is not by way of reason has proven. People have 100 times intellect. We're talking about Immanuel Kant here, right? He's 100 times smarter than any of us, right? They have, and the whole world heard it. The greatest people, we're talking even before the Victorian era. So there's been hundreds of years to refute this, right? But basically, in general speaking, people had to accept that, yeah, the reason can only go so far. What I mean is that then it is definitely a matter of faith and belief, right? Not reason. So the book's title already was a little bit off-putting, because it can't be done, right? It cannot be done. It doesn't mean that Christianity has been thrown out by Immanuel Kant, right? His skepticism didn't do that. He just said, but if you now move into the realm of religion, reason has its limits. And now it is strictly a matter of faith, right? And strictly a matter of belief. But what does that mean in our modern age? It means subjectivity. Brand starts chapter 1 where he goes through a lot of the misery in his life, and some bad things he did in terms of his family, but leaving them, stranding them and just going off on his own. He was atheist. So he didn't feel any purpose or meaning in his life like a lot of people. And then he talks about having that epiphany, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about this as well, where a lot of believers convert because they did have a flash, or they had some numinous experience, that took them out of the doldrums and made them realize that there's a loving God and a loving creator and all of that. But see, how can a man then call that objective? By definition, that is subjective, because the next jailbird or the next drunken person or the next guy in the AA or whatever it is over them, in England they've got it, in America they got it. In any of those situations, or just one day, anyone sitting on a park bench has this experience, but the guy on the next bench isn't affected by it. So it is subjective. So this blurring of the line again, we'll have Brown on to go through this. What is subjective and what is objective? So when these people talk about love, that there's a loving God out there, that is a statement. Psychopaths make the same kinds of statements. It has no value whatsoever. When they talk about that I was touched by the Lord, I seen the light, I know there's a loving God, that's a subjective statement and nothing more. So, we're not making much progress there, right? Because St. Thomas Aquinas said he had it up in his little monastery cell. Godfrey de Bouillon, said he had his. Bernard de Clairvaux, what's his name? Jimmy Swaggart.
Jim Jones saw the light. He said, I'm going to return as the black-haired raven. I'm the return of the Christ, he used to say.
Who's this?
Jim Jones. He also said that he was socialism incarnate, by the way. But anyways.
He probably was. That's even worse. No, exactly. See, these are subjective statements, and they're okay. Subjective statements are okay. I'm not knocking subjectivity. Subjective statements are okay because it's true for you. Now, see, another thing that you will, if you stop after 10 minutes, a person like Brian talking, you'll keep hearing this famous talismanic word, the we, in which it is, we can judge what's right and wrong. We can judge what's objective and what isn't. The Bible helps us do this and do that. So when a person like Mao Zedong says that he loves the world, he loves his people and all of this, we can tell that that's a breach of, the objective truth. First, I just go, who the hell is this we? Are we back to that? Then we haven't made